I have to say, after watching this anime for a month, in terms of sheer quality for its atmospheric directing, no anime in the winter 2019 season can even compare to the sheer quality that this anime has. Last week I highlighted the brilliance in how they detailed two separate flashbacks with the Doctor and the use of color and black and white gradient filters. This week it's how they detailed Rain. Now this is something I'm sure not many people are going to pay too much attention to, but for me it's that type of detail that really elevates an anime episode or anime overall into something truly masterful and something that deserves a lot of praise and respect. The anime kicks off with a scene set in the rain. Pouring rain, and you see a bunch of people ready for execution and a man clearly not wanting to kill them. We end the episode off, this entire episode is set in the pouring rain. We end the episode off with our main character regaining his sense of hearing. He can finally hear, and the first thing he hears is the sound of rain and the pain of a woman crying for her dead brother. The episode starts off with the pouring rain. Rain is generally a sound people associate with almost pleasure. People love the sound of the pouring rain, rain hitting the rooftops. Rain is something that generally is peaceful, but the episode starts off with a man not wanting to kill, who ends up having to kill a bunch of people, which then turns him into a murderer because this cursed sword wants more and more blood. Rain is associated with pain at the beginning of the episode, and it's associated with pain at the end of the episode. That's the type of detail I love to see in anime, and something not many people are probably going to focus on, but for me, that's the type of stuff I live for when an anime goes above and beyond in that case. I was really curious why this entire episode was set in the pouring rain. I was really curious if they're going to do anything with it, or if it was just going to be a stylistic choice for this episode, but seeing how they started the episode off and ended it, I can definitely tell this was intentional to really get across the first thing you hear. Like, you really got to think about this. Our main character, the first thing he hears is the sound of beautiful rain and the crying of a woman who just lost her family. What would that feel like? That's what I love about this main character, is how as he regains these simple things, maybe the sense of pain, maybe his sense so he can feel things like a cut on the cheek, the fact that the first thing he hears, that has to be so confusing. Something so beautiful surrounded by something so sad. That is so amazing, and the detail to this show is remarkable. Not even just with the audio, it's just the way the camera will shift around and cut around. The action in this show is a great representation of how strong the visual directing is. It moves so fast, and they use so many interesting techniques to really get it across, as there's a lot of speed and momentum to these fights. Sometimes you can't even tell exactly what's happening, but it shows you that these are two warriors going at it with their all. And I love how when you do pause, the in-between frames sometimes will still look damn gorgeous just because of how they're stylistically choosing to detail those shots. The visuals, the audio, the characters, this is everything that I love about anime wrapped up into one package, and why this is currently my favorite anime of the season. And that's not saying something lightly. Like, this season is chock full of amazing series, but just in terms of every little area, the audio, the visuals, the overall story and characters, this has everything going for it. The idea to this week's episode isn't anything all that original. If you've watched any samurai stories, any anime where a guy has a katana, like, honestly, a cursed sword is kind of a staple. It's a very basic story structure, but what this anime did and made it something truly unique is how they detailed it, and not just made it whoever touches the sword is going to become evil. Like, Dororo absolutely touches the sword, and I was like, okay, so he's going to start killing, but it's just the sword trying to get back to its master, because its master is the one who awoken it, because it was a rusty blade, but as it gets more and more blood, it became more and more devastating. That's what I like, because honestly, I would have been fine if it was just anyone who touched it became evil and thirsty for blood, but I'm appreciative of the fact that they didn't go the simple route of, oh my god, here we go again, whoever touches the sword is going to become evil. No, it's the sword wants its master, and its master wants the sword so it can keep on killing. That made it a bit more interesting and a bit more different. Sure, even if they did go completely typical, it would still be a fine episode. In fact, it'd probably still be a great episode, but it's an amazing episode because it takes simple ideas that we've seen done before, but does its own twist. Even if it's only a slight deviation from the typical standard to these types of stories, it still is enough to appreciate the fact that it did something interesting, on top of having a character who can sense that it's just the sword that's evil, not the person individually. And he did his damnedest to not kill this man, but the fact that he regained the sword, it was clear that he can't just keep taking the sword away from him. The sword's going to keep going back, so he had no choice but to deliver the final blow, which I have to say, just the overall directing to that scene, especially at the end, like when he's regaining his hearing, and then you see the woman just so sad, but also understanding that he was happy and he was peaceful in his final moments, that was very, very heartbreaking. Like, sure, you can say we didn't really get to know this character past she lost her home, she lost her kind of way of life once her her brother left because she could no longer protect her kind of home and village or whatever it was, but it was enough to get you across that she truly did care for this brother. And anytime she was crying in the past, he would fold these origami cranes, and that kind of cheered her up, and you saw that he did fold one before he left, so you understood that he was still in there deep inside, but the only true way to get him to be free is probably to kill him, because that sword was definitely devastating. Though I have to say, I wasn't expecting the sword to actually regain him a sense of anything, because I thought it was just going to stick to the formula of it had to be a living and breathing monster, but I guess the sword counted as a living demon based on the fact that he did regain his hearing. The characters in the show are so interesting to me because even though most of them are only here for an episode or only there for every so often, it's interesting how much they can get across their thoughts and feelings and get you to care about them. Like this kind of evil samurai wandering the streets, I cared about this dude just because I wanted him to have a happy life for his sister. And I like how they got me on board immediately. Like I could tell it's not his doing willingly, it's the sword's doing all this evil and carnage. It's because of the sword. If we can get the sword away, but over the course of the episode you realize you can't get rid of that sword. So it's like you have to put him down, but if only his sister didn't have to see. Like that's the type of stuff you really hope to see in a series like this as you watch a character slowly regain his sense of humanity. I love the fact that when he does get cut on the cheek, he does recognize it, like what is this? Even though he can't speak, you can exactly tell what he is feeling. The body language and face reactions to these characters are amazing. The episode starts off with so many just tormented faces, especially the man who just didn't want to kill but had no choice because his lord was telling him either kill yourself or kill these people. I just love how beautiful this series can look surrounded by so much death and carnage. The way they'll detail rain on a rooftop, like just the way they detailed rain, not only just from the audio but also the visuals, how it was detailed splashing on the ground, splashing on the rooftop, but then you'll see all this blood splatter across people. It's very brutal, but they walk this interesting line of keeping the series just gorgeous but also so gloomy and dark all at the same time. And it's something that I don't see too often, because usually with a series with this much blood you can maybe feel it's too gory, or it just they show you so much that you kind of grow numb to how much blood is in the series. For me, every time I see someone die in the series where they'll splatter blood or you'll see a limb just in the distance, it always feels the exact same way that I felt when I first saw it in episode 1. It feels like because the way they're cutting around, they're not always highlighting the most gory aspect. They're showing you something gory happened, but we're not going to highlight all the gore to you. We're going to leave it up to your imagination to fill in the rest, or it will highlight it, and because you hadn't seen something like that for maybe 10 minutes or an episode, you're like, that is absolutely disturbing, but it fits the time period and fits what's going on with our main character. That's something not a lot of anime can get right, but Map is hitting it out of the park. So far, I'm in love with the cast of characters. I love the idea of slowly regaining his senses one by one. I do honestly hope at this point that his voice stays gone for a decent amount of time. I like the idea that he's regaining hearing, maybe he'll even regain sight at some point, but I do like the idea that he is silent because I feel like I can get inside his head so easily and understand what he is thinking. Like that scene when he regained his sense of hearing at the end of the episode, you can tell how confusing that must be because you're hearing something so beautiful and sad all at the same time, but he can't differentiate between those because he's never heard those before. A man who's never been able to feel pain, a man who's never been able to see or touch or really have anything that makes us human is now slowly regaining it. Sometimes that's going to be a penalty and sometimes that's going to make him more human. That's really interesting. This episode was incredible. Honestly, I'd say it's pretty much one for one with last week's episode, which was my favorite episode. There was just a lot of emotion, a lot of amazing directing from the visuals, but I think the audio is definitely my favorite part of this week's episode. It's amazing. Like this honestly feels like each week we get this mini movie that tells an interesting story while still building up to a grand end goal that I'm not totally sure where it wants to go, but I'm sure by the time he is 100% human, things aren't going to be all that we expect, and that's very exciting. Dororo episode 4, amazing episode. Honestly, this series is not letting up, and I hope it continues on the quality path that it's currently heading in. Let me know whatever you thought of this week's episode down in that comment section below. Did you love it? Did you hate? Your favorite moment? Whatever you're feeling, let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. But until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.